Welcome to the Therapy Show podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Mustard. In each episode, I interview a seasoned and knowledgeable talk therapist from the counseling world to glean valuable insights, techniques, and tools that you can apply to your practice and your life. And if you're considering a career in the counseling field or just want to hear about what it's like to be a talk therapist, then this is the podcast for you. Well, hey, friend, welcome back to the podcast. This is a little bit of an unusual episode because it is a podcast takeover with the guys from the Shrink Think podcast. And we went ahead and decided to split this episode up into two parts because it is chock full of attachment style information. And you'll hear as we get going with this episode, which is part one. I'm just catching up with the guys. I hadn't talked to them in a while. Potratz and Nathan Hawkins. They are two therapists in private practice in Oregon. And as we get rolling with the conversation, we then dive into attachment styles and how they can play out and show up in our lives. So it's a fun and casual talk, and we hope you find it entertaining and enlightening. But before we dive into today's episode, I have a special treat for you. If you've ever felt the need to prioritize your emotional well-being, then this is for you. I've created a free ebook titled 15 Easy Habits That Support Your Mental Health. And guess what? Along with this invaluable guide, you'll also get a self-care checklist to keep you on track. It's a fantastic resource, and I genuinely believe it can make a difference. So hit pause on this episode for just a moment, click on the link in the show notes, and grab your free copy. Trust me, you won't regret it. Now, on with the show.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Shrink Think podcast. I'm here today with Nathan and a special guest, Lisa Mustard, because this is a podcast takeover. We're taking over for the therapy show. Lisa, thanks for being here.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me back on your show. I'm really excited to be here. Always have a good time with y'all.
Of course. We're excited to have you. And would you like to intro your audience to us as well?
Yeah. So, hey, everybody. I have these amazing podcast takeover hosts this week. I can't even get it straight,
You're
y'all.
like, what's even happening? We're not here
We're
yet.
so confused on our end, but I'm really happy and excited to have the Shrink Think guys on. We've got, I've got Aaron here, Potratz and Nathan Hawkins from Shrink Think. So welcome, guys.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
We are having a great time, and we hopefully will not be so freaking confused about what we're doing that we can just get started and go.
So speaking of this podcast takeover, Lisa, I'm excited for it because you're here, and it's exciting to be here with you because you're super fun and we get along and we have a great time. And okay, we did say before the show, we're going to try to actually talk about stuff and get somewhere and not just laugh the whole time, but we are going to laugh. Right. But my first thought is like, okay, this is cool. So what are we doing? What is a podcast takeover?
That is a really good question. So how we are kind of, conceptualizing this is that we are recording one episode, and then we're going to take this episode and I'm going to release it to the Therapy Show podcast. And then you guys are going to release it to the Shrink Think feed podcast. So if you, by chance, listen to both of us, you're going to get double the goodness. And well, we don't know when we're going to release it yet. We haven't gotten that far, but you're going to hear this episode on both feeds. So
and maybe we'll try to release it at the same time, like like around the same date or week or whatever. Yeah. And then if you're like listening in the car with somebody, one of you could pull up the Shrink Think podcast. The other one could pull up the Therapy Show and time it like 1, 2, 3, go, and hit play at the same time.
Right.
And then give it in stereo.
Stream it in stereo.
And then hit subscribe.
And subscribe
subscribe on both of your phones to both of the shows. We would really appreciate that, y'all. And if you want to give us a rating and review, we'd love that even more.
Of course.
Gotta plug it.
Especially after this show, you got it, rate and review, because you'll be like, this, I just can't not, right?
Right.
And then you go to shrinkthink.com/swag.
Swag, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then you get stuff. Yeah. Whatever the stuff is.
Whatever's available.
A cool shirt.
In your size.
Right, or a gift for somebody else.
There you go.
So Lisa, tell us, let's go ahead and dive right in. And I know your audience knows who you are, and some of our audience may remember you. So tell us about who you are and what it is you do on the Therapy Show.
Sure. Well, I am a licensed marriage and family therapist in the great state of South Carolina, on the opposite side of the country of you guys. It's crazy to think that we're in two separate parts of the country. And I have a show, the Therapy Show, where I talk with therapists, coaches, marketers, influencers. I mean, all kinds of different people about the amazing world of talk therapy. Some of my episodes do qualify for continuing education contact hours for therapists. So if you are a therapist and you need some CEUs for your licensure renewal, head over to my site, lisamustard.com, and look for the half off. You can get your first pod course. I'm an MBCC approved provider. You can get half off your first pod course. And for those that are listening that just are interested in therapy, maybe they aren't therapists, but they're curious about how you guys present the what it's like to go to therapy. I also do life coaching for women 35 up who are looking to level up their relationships, their health, their spirituality, whatever. I love working with women in midlife. And what else can I promote? Well, I have the second to do that.
Can I just say too that Lisa, you are the real deal too. You're not one of those life coaches that is just going to like tell people what to do or how to live their life, but you actually live that stuff out as well. Like, I've seen some of the growth and the transformation. I don't know if that's the right word, but some of the growth that you've done for yourself personally. And it's very inspiring. It's like the kind of thing where it's like when you see somebody actually living it out and then telling you, it's like, oh, I believe you because you know exactly what you're talking about.
Oh, wow. Thanks. That's probably the biggest compliment that I've received regarding my life coaching. So thank you very much. Yeah. When I turned 40, I kind of hit this like, in my life, and for a number of different reasons, but I worked really hard to figure it out and to making the decision to move forward with reinventing myself at midlife versus kind of having that crisis moment and letting that kind of, be the obstacle for my 40s. I just worked really hard to get it all together and I just turned 50, and man, I'm excited for my 50s. Like, what am I going to learn in my 50s? Because in my 40s, I learned about myself and I learned how to podcast and I learned how to grow a business. So yeah, it's pretty exciting times. Well,
Sounds like you like to slow down.
Yeah, but
Right.
actually I am probably slower than I was 6 months ago. Kind of just, having to reevaluate how I was spending my time, intentionally spending my time. Y'all know when it comes to
Oh yeah.
growing businesses and growing a podcast and still being present for your family and staying committed to your highest values. It's a lot. But yeah, will you tell my audience a little bit about Shrink Think? And I want y'all to know this is one of my favorite podcasts to listen to. So my audience, I listen to the Shrink Think, and I go for walks when I listen to my podcast, and I can't tell you how many times I've had to stop at a corner because I'm laughing so hard at what you guys are saying. So if you love counseling and if you love to have a good time and laugh, you've got to check out Shrink Think. So share more with your story with my audience and how you guys got here.
Yeah, so man, it was a bunch of years ago. We basically, I was alone and scared and by myself.
And I came and rescued him.
Hallelujah.
It fed into my rescuer complex. I've overcome it myself as well.
And then I've been a victim ever since. I'm just kidding. So no, what happened was was because when you're in private practice by yourself, you really are by yourself. You're constantly doing phone tag to try to coordinate care. And so I decided I want to do like some kind of supervision group and then put it out there. I knew Aaron from grad school. I graduated a little bit before him, about a year ahead, which makes me better. That's a rabbit trail, really. Anyway, so I contacted him and I contacted a couple other people. He knew some people. Anyway, we start doing this group. And I'm telling a little bit of the story that normally does not get told because I think our audience doesn't probably know this part. And so we really kind of gelled, and I was talking about like, man, I want to try to add some office space and maybe do some supervision with some of their clinician. And I was like, I want to do that. And I'm like, it would be great if we could somehow do something together because a space opened below us. Like we were on I was on a second floor. And so anyway, skipping a lot, it worked out for Aaron to come there. We ended up doing supervision stuff. Then ended up being like both of our individual businesses started growing ridiculous. And then we got a second business together where we're partners. And then that group practice is continuing. That group practice is in 2 locations.
Oh.
And I'm trying to think. Go ahead and take them.
Yeah, and then it was like probably 4 years ago, we went to a conference for therapists, business who were business minded, entrepreneurial. And we went there and we had heard about podcasting, and I just walked away saying like, oh, this is something I want to do. Like, this is super cool. And Nathan's like, I want to do that too.
You're doing it. I have to,
Right.
because I'm a victim.
Exactly. But it's that idea, like, it's more fun. It's better to do that, with a partner, with somebody that you know and trust. And so I just did all the research about podcasting and learned how to do that. Just like you did, Lisa, and put it together. And we've been now doing the Shrink Think podcast for 2.5 years. Actually, you know what? No, this is 2 years this September. It's 3 years.
3 years.
Oh my goodness.
Wow, yeah.
This is like an old moment.
Baby growing so quickly.
It's like one of those old moments like, oh yeah, this was just like 10 years ago. And like, you've been saying that for the last 20 years.
Right. Yeah.
So it's been actually since 2020 is when we released the podcast. I think we have over 150 episodes.
We do, yeah.
Our kind of tagline is we're trying to bridge the gap between clients and therapists, because I think both of them need it. There's this huge gap, this huge space between when you go to therapy, or if you're a therapist and you're inviting people into your office, there are things that you're supposed to know that doesn't get talked about, doesn't get said. And a lot of people don't know that they're supposed to know it until it's like, why don't you know this? And so like there's this, and I'm intentionally kind of describing it like this mystery, this vague misunderstanding, because I think that happens a lot in therapy between counselors and their clients. And so we're just trying to like take some of the stigma out of mental health, but also take some of that guesswork out of that whole process, and talk about things openly and describe them from a therapist point of view with the clients in mind, so that if you're just a person that's interested in therapy or counseling, or maybe you do go, that you have some idea of what is supposed to happen. And then you listen and you're like, oh, I didn't realize that was supposed to happen. Or, oh, I didn't know I could do that. Or that's what therapists are looking for. Oh, I can like actually do this better now because I've been listening to this podcast.
Yeah, I think people are open to therapy, obviously, but a lot of times, what I learned, which is why we started, not why we started the podcast, but why we started another business,
the third business,
which was Shrink Think, is that people don't have necessarily, like, they're open to therapy, but then they show up and they don't really totally understand what's supposed to happen.
Right.
Like some kind of magic will happen.
Right.
And
it's kind of like the podcast where you do it and you're like, okay, I have a microphone.
Mm-hmm.
What am I supposed to do now?
Right.
You just do it.
I'll tell you one thing, you don't do what Lisa Mustard did and go by yourself. Holy crap, I do not know how you do that. I do not understand it. Like how you can talk like a Jiminy Christmas.
And you're just so natural. Yes, for sure.
Wow. I don't know, it's not that hard, I guess. You mean talking about myself doing the solo episodes?
Yes.
I did one solo episode when Nathan was traveling recently, and I remember I was talking to somebody else about it, and I said, okay, I'm gonna try to keep the kind of the humor and the lighthearted whatever, but like there's nobody there to bounce off of. I'm just like, I have to like entertain myself.
Right.
And that's more challenging to do on a podcast.
It is. Yeah, no, I totally get what you're saying. Yeah, so I love having guests on the show. I love interviewing people, but also what I was finding is that people were reaching out, asking me questions like on social media and like an email about specific topics. And I was like, why don't I just come on and talk about those topics? Because, why not? They're asking questions, give the people what they want, is kind of the way I look at it. Yeah, but I don't know. I just kind of do it. It's gotten easier. I think at the beginning it's kind of tough, but you just do it and you get better at it. Yeah. Funny story. My husband, up until recently, said he couldn't even listen to my episodes because they were like, he felt like I wasn't authentically me.
Because he knows you so well.
Yeah. It was like cringy for him, as my 15-year-old daughter would say. But I'm getting some street cred with my kids because like a couple years ago, I interviewed Lori Gottlieb from Maybe You Should Talk to Someone. Remember? Yeah.
That's like on my bucket list.
Yes, I want to do that.
Well, I was such a fangirl on that episode. I felt like such a dork afterwards. But you know who Emma Chamberlain is? Can I ever say her name? Emma Chamberlain. She's some influencer. No, I don't even know what generation she is, but not ours. And she interviewed Lori Gottlieb, and my 15-year-old was like, "Oh my gosh, you're like 2 degrees from Emma." I was like, "Who?" So I finally got
Oh
like
yeah, her. Yes, totally.
Yeah.
That's me and her just go way back.
Yeah. And I just booked an interview with somebody that I'm not ready to say who it is yet, but I got more street cred with my kids when I told them, because this person has a show on a streaming service, and we watched the show together a little bit, and just really cool. So I'm not ready to say that yet. I'll tell
That's
you
awesome.
later, but
so stay tuned for
so
the
subscribe to
therapy
the
show.
podcast.
Subscribe and listen to find out. I'm like dying now to know.
Yes, now I want to listen.
Yeah.
I need to hear
All right.
that person right now.
I'll tell you when it's booked. I mean, we're working on getting it scheduled and booked, so I'm excited. Really excited.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, what do we want to talk about today? I know we had some ideas. Is there like a topic that you wanted to bring out for our listeners?
For our listeners,
yeah.
yeah. So one of the things that I like when you guys talk about on your show, and I got really good feedback on mine, was attachment styles. And I think this is something that is kind of picking up a little bit of a trend in the social media world of like attachment styles, and you know, what that looks like. What are our attachment styles? How do they play out in relationships? Do we have attachment styles? How do they happen to, for us, to us? What do we do with them when we realize what we're doing in relationships? And it's all normal stuff. But I always like how you guys present the information. And so I thought it'd be cool if we could revisit or visit attachment styles. What do you think?
I think that sounds great.
I'm totally attached to that.
Where do you want to start?
So let's talk about the 4 different types of attachment styles, and there are different names for them depending on where you look and who you follow. But I did 2 episodes. I broke them up. It's 2 episodes on attachment styles. So I did part 1, which I talked about anxious and fearful avoidant. And then I also talked about avoidant and secure attachments on the 2nd episode. So would you guys be open to like sharing your thoughts on what that looks like what an anxious attachment looks like?
Oh, Aaron has a great way he breaks this down.
Yeah.
Do it for us.
Yeah, this is super fun. Because I think it's really relatable. I think if you're listening, it's like there's information and it's kind of like, oh, that's interesting, right? But like, how do you relate to it? You got to kind of like get into what does it look like to be this person and how do you experience it? That in a certain sense, I think that describes it a little bit better. So the explanation that we used on our show before that I really liked is it's this, if you're watching watching this podcast on YouTube, there's like this quadrant thing, right? Where you've got the 4 quadrants, 2 on top of each other, and you've got the 2 different axes. One of them is like my view of myself, which can be positive on one end and negative at the other end. And then the other axis would be my view of other people, or my view of you, like my the close person or whatever. There we go. Is that positive or is that negative? So on the one hand, if I'm okay, so to think about it, like if I have a positive view of myself, on the middle axis, the other one, it's my view of other people. Is it positive on one end or negative on the other end? So if you've got positive, my view of you is good and my view of myself is good, then it's like, I'm okay and you're okay. We're all okay. Everyone's secure. I'm secure. Everything's fine. I'm not really worried about something. So if like something happens, I'm like, you'll be okay. If something happens, I'm okay. We got this. Everything's fine. Right. That's kind of like you're in somewhat like regulated, easygoing, secure person. It doesn't mean they don't have feelings. It doesn't mean they're not a human being. It just means they can sort of like roll with the punches in a certain sense in a relationship. And then if you've got one where it's I'm okay, but you're not okay, or my view of me is positive and my view of you is negative, then this is where you get your fearful avoidant, like I'm good. I don't know what kind of mess you got going on over there. You're not okay, right? So I'm gonna just leave you alone. You do your thing. I'm gonna be avoidant over here and be independent and whatever, right?
Right. Kind of like put
That's
my hands up and wash my hands and walk away sort of thing. Yeah.
right. And you kind
Yeah.
of get a sense like from it that there can be a certain sense of like arrogance sometimes with these avoidant people, because they're essentially looking at the other person as you've got a problem that you need to fix, and it's not my fault. It's not,
Right.
it has nothing to do with me, right? And so there it's just basically
And that's the avoidant, not the fearful avoidant.
I'm sorry, yes, thank you for correcting that. That's like your anxious avoidant,
You're
right?
Yeah.
Because the avoidant can also, this kind of avoidant can have some anxious tendencies as well, where like you're not okay, and they can have some anxiety, like, are you going to be okay? Like, I'm concerned about you. But the fearful avoidant is something altogether different. We'll get into that in a second.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so then the third one would be, if I'm not okay, my view of myself is not great, but my view of you is okay, then essentially what you're saying is I'm an anxious attacher, and that's like, I'm not okay, but you're okay. Okay, so as long as you're okay, then I'm okay. And you can kind of get the sense from that there's like this codependent dynamic, which often happens with anxious attachment, like sort of your classic anxious attachment of like, I need to make sure that you're okay in order for me to feel good. So if anything's going on, why are you nodding your head? You're what, Lisa, what's happening? Oh, Nathan left. Oh no, is something wrong? Did he reject? Did I say something?
Yeah. Did I do something?
I don't know what happened. Like Nathan, it like doesn't like me anymore. Like did he like left the show? Okay, he's back. Okay, we're okay. Everything's okay. That's like your anxious attachment.
Right. Yeah. I've seen that a lot. That's probably me. I think I had that for a while growing up personally. I know we've kind of chatted a little bit, offline about our own stuff. But I think, like you said, the codependent, that's where, that's going to show up. And imagine two people both being like that. Whoa, in a relationship.
Exactly. And like we can get into it a little bit more, but like anxious I tend to be more anxious attachment as well. And they do tend to need more reassurance, or they desire that reassurance. So that can be difficult. Okay, so the very last one is, and I can joke about it, but in a certain sense, actually, I have a tremendous amount of compassion for people in this category, because they have likely been through the most chaotic kind of an environment, the most inconsistent environment. And it's actually really sad if you think about it. Children in their growing up years need a lot of stability and a lot of predictability. And so people that grow up without that can often then grow up with this, developing this fearful, avoidant, or disorganized attachment style, because nothing was consistent. The caregiver was not consistently there. So in essence, you have you're not okay and I'm not okay. And so nobody's okay. It's kind of like,
that was scary.
Yeah, that's exactly that's why it's fearful, right? Because like, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know who's going to be in charge. I have no safety net. I don't know if you're going to catch me. I don't know any of that stuff. So there's a lot of like fearful, anxious, inconsistency that's going on for these people. Sometimes they can connect and feel okay. There can be like some spurts of like secure connection, but if there's no consistency there, then they are always fearful that something could happen to disrupt that. So it's kind of like that anxious attachment style, but because it's just so inconsistent and intermittent, it's all over the place.
Great. Okay. Phew. That's a lot.
There we go. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.
Wowzers. Yeah. That was
there's a lot of thoughts that come to mind when we go over this kind of stuff.
Probably connection.
Well, where do you want to take that? So this is kind of like the foundation of like attachment style. What do you think your listeners would like to hear, or where do people kind of need to go with that?
Yeah, I think just kind of, well, first of all, going over that is just really helpful. It's a good reminder, it's helpful. And I'm sure people listening are trying to figure out like, where am I and what's my attachment style? And, when you explain it like that, we all have a way of attachment, nothing, good, bad, or indifferent. We all have an attachment style. It can definitely change, I think, over the years when you have more awareness about yourself and how you're showing up in relationships and the feedback that you're getting from people that you're in relationship with, as well as maybe in your job, you'll learn a little bit about yourself. And the places where you have to show up and be an adult, you're going to learn pretty quick. Like, or maybe you won't. Maybe you aren't interested, or you're in denial of some sort. I see that a lot, and it's everybody else's fault, not mine. That's part
Which
of your
attachment style is that?
Yes, I know. That's
Boom, you just got called out.
which one is it? Who got called out?
That would be the avoidant.
Right. I was gonna say the avoidant one. So I think it's just kind of, maybe talk about like what do you do? Like, what do you do when you realize you have this attachment style and you don't like it? You know that for things to get better in your life, you are the one that has to be different. You can't put it on other people. You finally have that realization, like, I'm the adult here. I'm the common denominator. Maybe it's time that I do a little bit of work on myself. So maybe we should go in that direction. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I would add into that because I think it's like a double whammy.
Mhm.
And an easy maybe milieu to be able to talk about it is that same person you're thinking of. So you are listening to the show and you're having these thoughts, and you are a parent.
Ooh.
So it's a little easier, I think, to conceptualize, because everybody who is a parent is also an actual adult usually. Usually, maybe not every single individual. But if you can think in terms of, we know that if you're an adult and you have a child, they are not your peer. So if you can think in terms of, okay, I'm going to work on myself. I have a natural kind of avoidant thing. How do I respond to my child when I have this avoidant tendency? Because you can't find your security within your child, but you're still going to, I would argue, especially those parents out there know this, like, you do something or say something and think to yourself, why did I just do that?
Right.
Because that attachment's so natural that you're going to naturally do that everywhere you go with every human. The question is how well do you know them? So working on it, I think it might be interesting to consider it from that perspective, because you can kind of like, you're kind of doing some self-evaluation when you're parenting anyway.
I think, yeah, that's an interesting context. Like, if you're parenting, it can be really difficult to see, or to be, I guess, to discern, is this my attachment style that's happening here? Because a kid is just being whatever, they're just doing their own thing. So I guess when I was thinking about it, it was maybe, one thing that, if you're listening and you're a parent and you're not really sure, or if you are sure that you have a certain attachment style, but you want to see it in, like, how does this play out in your parenting, you can just ask yourself that whole, am I okay? Are they okay? question. So if something's happening and your kid is going through something, they're, having some struggle or having some emotion, and you can clearly see that they're not okay, then you can ask yourself, well, am I okay? And if if my kid is not doing well, like they're having some sort of a reaction to something, a meltdown of some kind, or we've got a lot of like teenage girls, daughters here on the show. So if they're going through some, drama that's happening or whatever, I don't have teen girls, I have boys, so it's a little bit different for me. But if there's some drama that's happening, you can ask, like, are they okay? And then I can check in with myself and be like, wait, but am I okay? And that can help you kind of decide, like, okay, which attachment style maybe am I? That can give you some awareness, at least to take the next step of like, okay, I'm not okay. In order to be secure, I need to be okay, regardless of whether or not my kid is okay.
Right. Yeah, I like that. I mean, I could give examples, from my parenting, and from, we have daughters, and if they're listening to the show, they're going to hate me for talking about them, but I will be as nondescript as possible. And I'm going to use myself as the example, because it is about my parenting style. It's really not about them. So I grew up in a very chaotic, traumatic, I mean, I would say some trauma here and there. I'm nothing, my trauma is my trauma, of course, but child of divorced parents. There's a lot of drama, a lot of chaos when I was middle school age through high school. And so my attachment style is very anxious. I'm a very anxious attacher, and attaché. What is it? I'm of an anxious attachment style. And I finally started to understand that in my 20s when I went to counseling for the first time. So, and then I became a therapist. So I'm super self-aware. Like, I'm always looking at what I'm doing and saying, what just happened? How could I, who did I hurt in this situation? What did I mess up? And then when I became a parent, I saw myself kind of projecting my own anxiety onto my kids. And that was a wake up call for me. Like, you got to get this stuff under control. But I like what you said, Aaron, about asking the question, are they okay? Are they okay? Is she okay? She's okay. How come I'm not okay? It's my stuff. Like, it's my stuff in that moment that I'm reflecting on, that's coming up. I'm getting triggered, whatever. My kid's okay. So I know it's my work, right? And I see that my husband will tell me that I can be a little bit of a helicopter mom at times. So I have to work really hard on not doing things for my kids that I know that they're old enough to do for themselves. Because I didn't have that growing up. I didn't have somebody there doing things for me. So I feel like, well, they missed out. I missed out on having a parent do these things for me. So I want to make up for that and be that parent that I never had. And mom, if you're listening, I love you, not throwing you under the bus. It's just whatever. We've talked about this. But so yeah, I found myself trying to make up for the childhood I didn't have. But yet my kids don't need me to do that, right? It's like this, it can be a very crazy feeling at times. The Therapy Show with Lisa Mustard is edited and engineered by Chelsea Weaver. If you're looking to start a podcast or ready to take the editing off of your plate, be sure to visit chelseaweaverpodcasting.com. Well, that wraps up another episode of The Therapy Show with Lisa Mustard. I know there are hundreds of thousands of podcasts out there, and I'm thankful you've chosen to listen to mine.
Be sure to visit lisamustard.com to access the show notes and discover more fantastic content.
And I'd be grateful if you subscribe to the show. Thank you.